All right.
Hello and welcome to the Beyond podcast. We're talking about The Empire Strikes Back. I am Grand Moff Mediocrity 4.
I am not here, kind of, because I am just watching a Smash Brothers tournament all weekend starting today. It's the best part of the year. It happens twice a year. It is the best fucking thing in the world. So I'm kind of off in my own little world. I am dude, what the heck.
And I have officially turned over to the dark side because I have begun to ship Snowbird. I am Robert.
Yes!
This isn't the Ruby podcast. Why are you bringing that in here?
Yes! Sorry. Go to the
Snowbird.
Ruby Beyond Facebook page. Look it up. You'll see what I mean. And I have caveats.
Snowbird. No, but your caveats make it better, though. The caveats actually improve it anyway.
Thank you. But anyway, we're here to talk about Star Wars.
Yeah, speaking of...
the ideal sequel, The Empire Strikes Back.
Very much, yes.
Which...
Spoiler, I've actually watched all the way through episode 1 at this point now.
Yeah. So...
I couldn't help myself.
So Empire Strikes Back, widely considered to be the best Star Wars movie, widely considered to be one of the best movies, period. I think it was like either number 5 or 6 on Watch Mojo's. Sellout hacks as they are, but it was like number 5 or 6 on their list.
Spoiler alert, I disagree.
Yeah, well, I mean, I already said why I disagree in the last podcast, which was On A New Hope. But I kind of want to talk about the nature of sequels, because sequels are kind of a weird concept.
Yeah.
In the artistic world, and it's been that way since the first novel sequels.
Yeah, they're kind of an odd. They're kind of a difficult thing to nail down because you're wanting to be able to do as good as the previous thing, but you also want to make your sequel feel essential, and there's just a million factors to consider with a sequel. So, yeah, it's definitely
one is the brand.
Yeah,
like if you create a brand, then higher ups and stuff are going to want more from that brand, which is why a lot of sequels seem like really cheap cash-ins, because a lot of movies aren't made with sequels in mind.
Yeah,
Star Wars was.
Transformers.
I actually do think Transformers was made with sequels in mind. Problem is, they were always bad.
Yeah, they were bad from the very beginning. Even the first one was not very good.
Yeah,
I think I watched the first 2. And that was it, and I got sick of them after that. I love cars, and I cannot watch the Fast and Furious.
I got officially sick with the fourth one.
I thought the first, and even maybe this, I thought the first and the second Fast and Furious were okay, but then they just kept going and going, and for some reason people keep buying them, and it's just a mess. So yeah,
I'm one of those weirdos that actually likes Tokyo Drift a lot.
I don't think Fast and the Furious was good until Fast 5. For me, that's when that was the first actual good one.
I don't know.
Interesting. All right, anyway, back to Star Wars. Yeah, this had a sequel in mind. This is actually, this discussion is one of the biggest reasons why Avatar: The Last Airbender is better than Korra. It's one of the biggest reasons why, is Korra wasn't made with the full story in mind. And in fact, it's impressive that they're able to make it as good as they did. It was made with a full
story in mind, but the only story that they had in mind was the first season.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Heroes. Yeah, exactly.
So,
yeah, because Korra itself was a cash grab sequel.
Yeah, but in the but kind of like what you talked about there with the Last Airbender, they always had at least 3 books in mind at least. So
yeah, and another thing is that it's another thing I blame M. Night Shyamalan Ding Dong for, is that I wonder if Korra would have existed if it weren't for him fucking up the movie so bad, because if he hadn't, that I think Michael and Brian would have concentrated on the continuation of movies, and if they had been a bigger part of the movies, then we probably never would have gotten Korra. And I really wish we never got Korra, because I think it ruins the futures of the characters in a lot of ways. I think they fucked that up big time, and that's my biggest problem with it.
Yeah, and speaking of The Last Airbender, Nostalgia Critic's next review is Dragon Ball Evolution, which is a movie that suffers from very, very much the same problems as The Last Airbender.
Yeah, agreed.
But
yeah,
that'd be fun.
But But so what? What I would say the Star Wars sequels had going for them, what The Empire Strikes Back had going for it, is that like George Lucas had originally basically written out, if I recall correctly, he had in his original play had basically been a screenplay had been a combination of all three of these movies, episode 4, 5, and 6, but it was too long, so he just wrote the first third. So like he already had this second movie in mind when he wrote the first movie.
Yeah, and from what I've been able to gather, the prequels and stuff were more like notes and stuff he had that he would give to the actors to help fuel their performance.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And so that's like that, and that's part of why this was so successful. It's kind of the same thing with Lord of the Rings. You know, the Lord of the Rings was originally written all as one book, and it's very much the same thing here.
Which I think we've referenced before.
Yeah.
Yeah. So with the sequel, you don't want to rehash it, because if you're just going to rehash stuff, why even really make it? Mm-hmm. Unless there's like a lot of distance between the two movies, which at that point you're either a remake or a soft reboot. Jurassic World would fall into this. Force Awakens would kind of fall into that category. I mean, they used to remake Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde like every decade. There was one in like 1928, one in 1934, one in 1947 or whatever.
Yep.
And there was one in the 50s too that I can't remember who was in it. But yeah, they did that like every decade.
Musical. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, sequel. The first like actual sequel, was for any movie was in 1933. It was Son of Kong, which was a really quick cash grab by RKO to cash in on what at that time was the biggest movie of all time, which was King Kong. And the first good sequel was Bride of Frankenstein, which both of those movies take elements from the books, but they change a lot of stuff to make it fit more into the monster movie formula that they had developed. I'll give a shout out to Overly Sarcastic Productions, who just did a video on Frankenstein.
It was so good.
I haven't seen
all of her videos are she's amazing. He's amazing too. Blue's amazing too, but Red's more up my alley.
Yeah, it's a
that's in my sub box. It's in my sub box to watch for sure.
Yeah.
Whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, they did a really good job talking about that, and kind of I don't know. I don't know that, like, because they very much talk about. I like what they go into there about kind of how like neither Frankenstein nor his monster were in the right and stuff like that. They were both just terrible to each other.
Which getting back was sorry, little track. Not quite back to Star Wars yet, but back on the track leading to Star Wars.
High Powered is rolling in his proverbial grave right now.
Well, I mean, we're the whole point of this is that we're kind of talking about movies as a whole, using Star Wars as or we're using this as a primer. Because the other way you can make a sequel is by doing the logical plot progression. Sometimes you can do a little bit of both. This is the most common type of sequel in the 70s. Was the kind of almost episodic TV type sequel where you got the same character, you got the same exact characters and stuff, but they're going through like a slightly different arc with a completely different scenario. Like the best example I can come up with is Dirty Harry. Mm-hmm. First Dirty Harry, where he's chasing down I can't believe it's not the Zodiac killer, and then the second one he's dealing with corrupt police because he's in San Francisco, and that's just the logical progression you would have, and that kind of setting with those kinds of characters. And then they kept making sequels, and somehow all the Dirty Harry movies wound up decent to outright great.
Yeah. Same with the Dollar series. If we're talking about Clint Eastwood and sequels with a fistful of dollars,
I
and
guess.
I don't know. It was
I
like
guess.
they were all decent films, but the one that's really hit that people really remember is The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly.
That's just because of the score, though. Let's be
Yeah, I was
real.
gonna say,
Let's be real. Best part of that movie is
the ending. Yeah.
As a big fan of Western films, and as a very big Clint Eastwood fan as well, for not only his acting but also his directing work, the Dollars trilogy is massively overrated. Massively overrated. And my film teacher that I took the class on Western film from in college also agrees. He actually specifically did not show us anything about the Dollars trilogy. He showed us this random Southern Western that was they're actually remaking right now called The Beguiled, which was starring Clint Eastwood.
Yeah.
That movie is fucking incredible.
I wouldn't hold it up as one of my favorite Eastwood movies, but it's good.
It's good. It's a really good movie. It's definitely different. It's as a movie by itself, it's better than the Dollars movie. I would 100% argue that. So
yeah, so with Star Wars, they tried doing kind of a mix. It's a completely different scenario, but it does like tie in and take off where the last one left off.
Yep.
But it also tries going a lot deeper into the themes and the actual like kind of world building content. Like just as an example, and I actually kind of have this as a later bullet point to get into. But like the whole force being used for telekinesis, that wasn't in the first movie.
Yeah, no,
true. Yeah, very sure.
That the first time we see that is in the Wampa scene.
Yep.
But because of the success of the first Star Wars movie, 20th Century Fox gave George Lucas kind of the same relative amount of budget for the sequel. I say relative because on one hand they did have actually less money, but on the other hand they didn't have to develop all the technology like they had to with the first movie.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, so it was pretty much the same the same amount of bang for their buck. Yep.
Yeah. And with this one, well, I kind of have it as a bullet point, but it's just something worth talking about. There actually was a Star Wars thing to come out in between A New Hope and Empire Strikes Back.
Yeah.
It was 1978 or 79. The Star Wars Holiday Special.
I've never seen it. I don't want to subject myself
as much as I don't have a lot of respect for George Lucas, I respect him enough to never watch that.
Yeah.
I only see reviews, so
I won't watch it.
Everything I've seen of it is just awful.
I do at least have enough respect for Lucas to not watch that.
Yeah, even George Lucas like just stay away from that.
Yeah.
I was literally getting paid to make that.
Yep.
I don't even know how that shit happened.
You guys actually kind of almost see me better. Yeah, you guys can almost see me better, I think.
You're kind of off to the side though, right now.
Well, I'm just leaning to the side right now.
Okay, yeah, but yeah, no, I think we can.
Yeah.
You
know.
So
that happened, and
everyone
wishes they could forget.
And that was the easy cash grab thing to do because Star Wars was the biggest thing ever after 1977, and so everybody wanted to get in on the action. And we talked about that last podcast with all the rip-offs, the spin-offs. Even by this point, it had kind of started to get like really merchandised.
Merchandising.
Like
I think real money from the movie is made.
I think, funny enough, I think it
so good.
Yeah, funny enough, I think it actually was Marvel to have the first Star Wars comics, and they had them early. Like they had them by the summer of 1977, if I remember correctly.
Yeah. Well, basically, they said, "Hey, while we're cashing in on all merchandising, let's have the characters celebrate Christmas."
Or Wookiee Life Day.
Yeah.
That was the name of the holiday. It was the Star Wars Holiday Special, not the Christmas Special.
I don't care.
They were politically correct PC bullshit before politically correct PC bullshit was a thing. Ugh.
Seems like it, yeah.
Back when liberals actually were liberal, man. Why can't we have that again? Shit. I'd way prefer hippies over the fucking shit we got right now. And then again, bad conservatives are exactly the same as they always were. So I mean, can't really change that part. So just to balance things out, I am a registered independent, just so you know.
Same here.
Just so our audience doesn't completely throw stones at me. I voted for nobody in the last election because they both suck too much.
So, as far as the technical side goes, so after the holiday special stuff, which everybody just nobody put that on their resume. With that much is clear. Nobody ever put that on their resume. It doesn't technically canonically exist.
Sort of like how all the actors didn't want themselves associated with the Emoji Movie.
Yes, except T.J. Miller, who said it was like gonna change the world because he's an idiot.
That's pretty bad. What a dumbass.
So I did want to highlight that the effects in this movie were done in a very different way from A New Hope and what would later kind of classify Star Wars. There was a lot more stop motion in this movie.
Yeah, and I was gonna say that's one thing I wanted to point out. There's definitely one of the things I wanted to point out was that my what's the term again? I always forget what it's fucking called. My suspension of disbelief was broken a lot more in this movie than it was in A New Hope, and I think it's a combination of the stop motion and the fact that they tried to do more because of the success of the first one. Whereas they didn't keep it quite as simple as they could have. I think.
Yeah, I think Red Letter Media makes this point in his Phantom Menace reviews. Like, A New Hope, the climax is the Death Star trench run. Empire Strikes Back, there's actually two plot lines going on. There's Leia stuff in Cloud City, and then there's Luke versus Vader, but it's all still on Bespin. Then Return of the Jedi, you actually get three with Luke and Vader and the Death Star, the battle over Endor, and then the battle on Endor. And then by Phantom Menace... Yeah, but it's still all on Endor. And then by Phantom Menace, you have four going on at the same time. With the space battle, the Gungan battle, the Naboo battle, and the Duel of Fates. And so it did progressively get a little less... a
little overstuffed.
Yeah. Which is why... which is really one of the big things... Like, other than Empire Strikes Back being not as Star Wars as A New Hope was, the more like the looser script is what kind of brings the movie down for me. Down like not even a full point though.
Yeah.
Like this is still a 10 out of 10 for me. The spoiler alert from the end. It's still a 10 out of 10 movie for me.
It's not for me. It's not. I think the "No, I am your father" line by itself.
We will have a whole section for that because I think I think you and I are gonna argue.
Yeah. Well, Robert, what's your stance on that line, by the way?
Just a thumbs up, thumbs down. We'll get into that later.
Okay.
Yeah, that's all I want.
All right. So
somewhere between that, like I'll talk about.
So
we'll talk.
There was so George Lucas ended up kind of going over budget, and I think I didn't have time to do as much research on this as I would have liked to. I think a lot of it was the locations that they filmed at, and the fact that they used a lot more sets in this movie. Like Hoth and stuff were all filmed like on a movie backlot that's used for snow places, so it's still like on location, but it was like they set aside. But all the Bespin stuff and all the Dagobah stuff was filmed on was filmed in the Fox Studios, which probably raked up the budget a lot more than A New Hope did, which only the Death Star stuff was filmed on set in that movie. So they ended up going over budget, and that's why for a lot of the action scenes and stuff, they had to resort to kind of lower end stuff. Like that's one of the reasons why they had to do a lot more stop motion is because of budgetary reasons. That's why when the AT-AT blows up, it's just like it just stands up straight, falls down, and then they do the explosion, and then they just add the explosion effect later by blowing up the model.
Yeah.
By actually blowing up the model with like sticks of dynamite or whatever they ended up using.
Which, hey, that was cool, but yeah.
Yeah, it's funny. The explosions still look good. Like, the explosions still look great in this
because
film.
they really blew up those models.
Yeah, and I think that's the funny thing is, like, them dying, you know, everything before the explosion looked terrible with that sequence, but then the explosion looked great, so it kind of helped, but it was kind of awkward about, you know, in the fact that they got that part right. Why didn't they get the rest of the effect?
Yeah, there's also some obvious stunt dummies in some of the scenes. Like when Luke crashes a snowspeeder and he's just all like,
"Oh, that was bad," because he looks like he didn't even move.
He's dead. Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
he didn't even move the whole time.
For the longest time, I thought that for the longest time. Yeah, I thought it was Dak for the longest time.
Wait, that doesn't make any sense. He wasn't flying the thing. Yeah, that was odd.
Yeah, that was not good.
Yeah, that thing in better. Yeah.
But there's kind of a strength in adversity, and that kind of shows with this movie more than any other. Maybe more with The New Hope, because The New Hope things were literally breaking on a daily basis, and they're having to freaking deal with every single problem you can freaking think up when you're filming in the desert. They had actors like actually like fainting filming the Tatooine scenes and like almost dying out there. Nothing quite like that in this, but there was some strength in adversity. One of the things that they had to deal with was Mark Hamill's car accident that he had shortly after filming A New Hope. And I think he was still undergoing facial reconstruction when they did the holiday special, which is why in the holiday special his face looks all like weird. And that's kind of why Mark Hamill's got this stranger face ever since. Like, he looks completely different in A New Hope than he does in anything else, and that's why. And George Lucas actually added in a scene to the script to explain that, and that is the first scene we see, which is the Wampa. But it's the Wampa scene. Was to explain like why Mark Hamill's face looks so much different than it did.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's all I have for that bullet point. Yeah. As far as the Wampa scene goes, this is actually where I kind of prefer the special edition. Because in the New Hope, they couldn't finish the suit. Like, the suit was malfunctioning and stuff, and so they can only use like the mask and one of its arms in the scene, which kind of made it a little confusing. Which kind of works, especially at the beginning. Like, they don't like show it in the beginning. They just still use the parts, but then it's later off you get the payoff. Later on in that sequence, you get the payoff of actually seeing the Wampa creature, but it's only in the special edition. But more importantly, you get what we referenced before, which is the first use of telekinesis, which I'm sure blew people's minds in 1980. Like, oh wow, how did that happen?
Because he filmed it because they reversed to Mark Hamill throwing.
Yeah, well, that's how you do scenes like that. It's filmmaking.
That scene I still really like there, and where it is. That scene was great. It definitely would have blown people's minds back then, and even if it doesn't really blow your mind now, especially because not just because it's 2017, but more because we've seen Star Wars a million times now. It's still really cool. It's a great part of the scene, and it's what's actually funny is this is actually one of the places where I think that in some ways the prequels kind of help the sequels, the original films, and why the prequels aren't complete garbage, because the fact that he's able to do that with little to no training whatsoever kind of shows how strong Luke actually is. So I think that's to be honest.
It kind of goes back to A New Hope, where like the Force itself in that movie, especially, was just all about feeling and emotion, going with the flow, acting on instinct, and so, and this is why I really don't think a lot of the criticism around Rey sticks.
Yeah.
Is for this exact same reason. Like, it's all just instinct. It's all, and especially now that the trailers are making it look like she's some sort of forced doomsday device.
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah. Oh my goodness, I can't wait for that movie to come out, and I can't wait to talk about it.
Excited, yeah.
That's why we're doing this.
Yeah, that's why we're doing this.
That's why we're doing this, yeah. But yeah, I do agree that that is one of those things where the Force feels, I guess, a little more active now in this. And I do agree that I think, the knowledge that the prequels give us that Anakin was a particularly powerful Force user kind of makes it a little more believable that Luke was able to learn as fast as he did and eventually beat Darth Vader. So
and this is also where a lot of the expanded universe content kind of helps, because at least in the novelization of Phantom Menace, they really explain that like regular human reflexes cannot pod race. Like, a human pod racer is absurdly rare. Like, the fact that Anakin could even survive a pod race means that he was powerful with the Force.
Yeah, Qui-Gon points that out. I thought that was
and that's why Qui-Gon gave him the midichlorian thing. Test.
Which, yeah.
Yeah, we'll get to that when we get to Phantom Menace.
There was a...
that's one thing. That's one thing I will not be defending in Phantom Menace, by the way.
What?
Yeah, that was something I was...
Midichlorians.
That was one thing. Is it? So this is when Luke was going into Dagobah and he was all, "Oh wow, I'm getting some massive life force readings." There was this voice over the back of my head that went, "Oh, are you sensing his midichlorians?" I was just like, "Dang it, no, I don't want to think that."
Yeah. So odd thing. I was a smart kid. But sometimes I'll remember something that I thought and just be like, how did I come up with that, like, reasoning? So because of the context clues and what the Rebels were talking about in this movie especially, I thought Rebel had something to do with finding wildlife on planets.
I'm confused.
I don't know why. Because they're all, in this movie, they're always talking about finding life forms. Scanning for life forms. Like, they repeat that line like 10 times in this movie. What was I supposed to think?
Well, CinemaSins did make a joke about that kind of how, like...
I guess I get what you're saying.
By the way, I did watch this way more than I watched A New Hope as a kid.
Yeah, okay.
Oh, did you? Okay.
Yeah.
Like, to be fair, CinemaSins did make a joke about how, somehow, after getting chased to this planet, they were able to find an indigenous species, in the Tauntauns, and they were able to train them and get them to let them and like domesticate them in a very short amount of time, and that was kind of weird. But yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, because this movie takes place like what, 2-3 years after A New Hope,
something along those lines. Yeah, 2 or 3 years.
And this is actually my favorite opening title crawl in the Star Wars movies.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
because it lets you know we're dropping you right into this, and right now the Empire is kicking teeth in. Like, we're letting you know that right up front. There is a reason why this is called The Empire Strikes Back. They done already bombarded Yavin 4 and blasted the rebels out of that hole, and now they're in hiding in Hoth.
Yeah.
And the Empire is searching the galaxy for their secret base.
Yeah, which is something that I really liked, because we had that whole... Because we talked about this last week, how... in A New Hope, up until that last moment when Luke got in that shot when Luke blew up the Death Star, everything was going exactly how the Empire planned, aside from losing the plans to the Death Star, which they got by the skin of their teeth. So, like, they did a very good job of establishing the Empire is extremely powerful, is extremely in control, and this once again reinforces the Empire, is kicking teeth and is... has their boots placed firmly between the rebellion's lungs and colon. So
yeah, you also find out that up until like sometime in between these two movies, Darth Vader had no idea that Luke Skywalker even existed.
Yeah.
Like, he finds out who Luke Skywalker, he found out who blew up the Death Star, and that's what turned him into the that's what kind of changed him into the character that he is in this movie as opposed to last movie.
Yeah, that's what made him a lot more brutal because he's looking for his boy. He's looking for his son. Yeah. He's going to kill anyone who gets between him and his boy. He's being a good dad. Nah.
Isn't that the robot chicken thing? I have a son. No, it's how it should have ended. I have a son. And then he just becomes dad of the. I have a son.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah. So we get the scene with the Wampa, and then Luke is told to go to Dagobah, which
by the ghost of Alec Guinness.
Yeah.
Upset that he had to be in the movie at all.
Probably.
Yeah, probably.
And I think by this time he was still like okay with
the
it.
Money made him feel so much better.
But by the time Return of the Jedi came around, he was definitely done.
Yeah, he was done. Yeah.
I mean, he still put in a great performance because he's a professional like that. But behind the scenes was probably complaining about doing another one of these silly little space wizard movies.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was all kinds of done, but did a good job.
Sorry.
I mean, I don't know. Are we trying to go scene by? Are we trying to go like by with the three parts now, or what?
I don't know. Well, next thing you had on the list was the Empire Search.
Yeah, the Empire Search, which we were talking about that with Vader kicking down doors and stuff. And
they make it clear that he's good looking
kicking
for
doors and kicking ass.
Yeah, and you really see
kick ass, and they're all out of doors.
And you really kind of see the might of the Empire in some of these early scenes because,
you see these massive Star Destroyers.
Yeah, well, in the first movie, you only saw I think you only see like one Star Destroyer in the entire movie, and it's at the very beginning. It might be the same one though.
I think two in Tatooine or something like that. But
but you see like the Star Destroyer flying by in A New Hope, but then in this movie you see like all the Star Destroyers gathered around, and then this giant shadow just looms over them, and George Lucas is a visual storyteller. Like you can definitely tell that with the editing, which I don't think we talked about this last time, but the editing in these movies with all the screen wipes, we can program that into a computer now and it's really rudimentary, but back then you actually had to kind of do it a little bit. And just the cuts and edits and with the music, I think that's the first time you actually hear the Imperial March.
Yep.
And that scene is just like, oh, this is what they're up against.
Yeah, that's the moment where you really.
By the way,
they are boned. Yeah.
By the way, the Imperial March is dope.
Imperial March is one of the best things Sean Williams has ever done, and that's saying something.
And he's done a lot of great, as I say, he's done quite a lot of great things.
Things, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then even when we get onto Hoth with the Battle Hoth, they do end up finding the secret base. The probe droid does send the signal out before Han's able to destroy it.
Yeah.
And then they send all the ships down, and there's actually like a lot of like really clever little dialogue bits in these scenes to explain like why the scenario is what it is.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. That's one thing I really liked about this is they did That's one thing actually I gotta give all three of the first three Star Wars movies like a lot of props on, is that they did a great job of setting things up. Like, I guess it's something that like shows, especially anime, does not do this. Anime does, they either try to overly explain way too much plot,
exposit,
or they don't explain jack shit and you have no idea what the fuck's going on. And other shows do it too, but I would just say anime is probably the biggest offender of this. And Star Wars, and also just modern movies right now, they don't explain shit to you. Whereas Star Wars does a great job of actually explaining things and putting it in with the plot going forward at the same time. I think that's awesome. They actually do a really fantastic job of that. And I think I want to say they even do a pretty good job of that in Phantom Menace as well, because that's how far I've watched up to at this point. Just trying to say, like, But especially in the first three, in the original 3 Star Wars movies, they really do an amazing job of that.
Yeah, Phantom Menace. I think Phantom Menace. I think they delved a little too much into kind of the more anime territory.
A little bit, yeah.
A little bit of over-exposition.
Over-explaining on stuff like the Force, under-explaining on things like what the Trade Federation is.
Yeah.
That's true.
But what I really like about how they incorporate this is they still make it into character moments. So why can't the Empire bombard Hoth? Well, because they have the shield generator that literally crushes I think this is in the comics or something, but the shield actually crushes the tip of one of the bigger ships. It actually rams into the shield. It's too big to get through. So they have to send smaller ships in through the gaps and stuff in order to land troops and stuff. And when they call Vader, it's we crashed and we pulled out of light speed too close.
Yeah,
it turns it into not just a reason to have ground force instead of just Imperial bombardments, but also that's the first time you see Vader force choke a dude from great distance, not across the galaxy, but from a completely different ship.
Yeah.
You have failed me for the last time. And so begins the endless line of secession that is Darth Vader's
just offing everyone who pisses him off. Yeah, basically.
Oh my goodness, the last guy that they get, the last guy they get was congratulations on the promotion, Admiral. He's just oh no, I'm next.
Oh no.
You see it he does of course, sir.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's just I am both.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then the guy before him, when they fail to catch Han, when Han escapes in the Falcon, is just take full responsibility. Yeah. And next time we see him, he's just lying dead on the freaking cell block floor. And Vader's apology accepted.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, Vader's hardcore in this movie.
Yeah, exactly. It's they explain why things need to happen, and they make Darth Vader, this very terrifying figure who does not want to be disappointed. Again, because he's looking for his boy, but yeah.
If there's something that definitely impressed me that I liked more about this film was definitely Vader. I think he's much more of a badass. And
I mean, he's off the leash. Grand Moff Tarkin is dead. There's no one to reel him in anymore.
Yeah.
The only one he answers to now is the Emperor himself,
who just kind of agrees with him on most things. It seems in this film. So it's okay, you do it. You're right so far. Yeah. So it works.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah, he's a lot more in control, and you can't blame his actions on somebody else and stuff like that. There's no one holding his leash now. He's off his leash and he is running rabid. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Sure is.
One thing I wanted to touch on before we get into the actual Battle of Hoth, which I think is one of the cinematic highlights of Star Wars history.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of the way this film is shot is different from A New Hope and different from any of the other Star Wars movies. The other Star Wars movies kind of adopted this as well. But it's Irvin Kershner's philosophy of filling the screen with people.
Yeah.
And he called it kind of the anti-2001 A Space Odyssey, where 2001 A Space Odyssey was much more concerned with the spectacle, showing you galaxies and star systems and wormholes and the ship's interior and every inch of the ship and all these cool gadgets and stuff, and wasn't really concerned with the human plot within the movie. Whereas this one is kind of the opposite of that, where you're getting scenes full of dialogue, full of Han and Leia's banter, Han and Chewie's camaraderie, Han and Luke's camaraderie to a lesser extent, because they don't get a whole lot of screen time together in this movie. In fact, Luke doesn't get a whole lot of screen time with any humans in this movie.
No, he doesn't. Which I don't necessarily see as a bad thing. It's
No, he's on his own journey. Leia's got the rebel plot on her shoulders, and Luke's learning how to use the Force.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
But I mean, I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. I will say,
No.
I don't know.
No, it's a great thing.
Yeah.
I will say, one of the things that I guess slightly, I don't know, it kind of bothers me, it kind of doesn't. I'm in two minds about it, and that's the whole Yoda and Luke thing. Now, okay, yeah, you can tell that Yoda's a puppet, especially when you compare him to Yoda in the prequels. But honestly, I think they do a pretty good job of.
Well, I mean, he was made by Frank Oz,
yeah,
who is probably the most technically proficient puppeteer of that era, probably of all time.
Yeah, I mean, so
Jim Henson was offered the role, but yeah,
Frank Oz and Jim Henson were like very, very close, and Jim Henson actually recommended Frank Oz. Jim Henson's like, you don't want this character to just be a Muppet. You want something a little more detailed. Frank Oz is your man.
Yeah,
and then Frank Oz actually went on to create Elmo, my favorite Muppet from Sesame Street growing up. He's also a good director. Like, if you've ever seen, he hasn't directed a whole lot of movies, but he directed one of my favorite heist films, movie called The Score, with Robert De Niro and Ed Norton, and a bloated elderly Marlon Brando.
The thing I can't get over is when I learned. I just still can't get over that. I could never would have guessed.
Can't get over what you cut out there.
When they revealed that, when I found out Elmo is a girl.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Never could have.
Me neither.
Weird. But I think it's true with all the Star Wars films, at least all the first 3 ones, is that they do a good job with the puppets, to be honest. Like, I believe Yoda was Yoda.
Yeah, and Dagobah was the biggest set that they had up until Revenge of the Sith, I think.
Dagobah
as far as like
incredible.
And what they did, they actually built the ground layer really kind of high up. And so they would have the puppeteer like Frank Oz and all of them, they'd be under the set working the puppet, and they'd have like everything planned out ahead of time. So it wasn't like an above puppet where like pull the strings. He had no strings. It was all a series of engineers underneath with sticks and stuff that would move him from below. Which is how Jim Henson liked to do a lot of his stuff.
No, and it looked really good. Like I said, I believed Yoda was, which was one of the things that I liked about that whole scene. Another thing I liked is this is where I'm into. Well, okay, the biggest complaint I have is, why is Yoda so goddamn annoying? Although I think I have some possible explanations for that. He's overly annoying. I understand why he pretended not to be Yoda. Well, I understand that part. It's just like, my guess is that he's being an annoying little sod because he's not been with humans for so long. That's my guess. But relative to how long his life is, it doesn't really make sense. I don't understand why they made him such an annoying little bitch for the first like 5 minutes or whatever. Do not understand that at all, because he completely changes personalities.
I think it was a test.
So, but it's a weird test. I mean, I can understand why he's like lying. I don't know. That bugged me. That still bugs me. I don't like that. But after that, now this is where I'm in two minds. I think they actually do a very good job of making Luke. They do. I think it's actually really interesting how they contrast Luke and Anakin, in that Luke isn't confident enough and Anakin is overconfident. That's how I would compare and contrast them, and I feel like that's the reason why Luke doesn't turn to the dark side and why Anakin does, because
I mean just think like when he first arrived on Dagobah and R2 got like swallowed, he didn't pull out his lightsaber, he pulled out a blaster.
Yeah, exactly.
And when Yoda was talking like, your weapons, need them, you will not. He grabs his weapons anyway.
He just grabs his weapons anyways and go in there.
Yeah.
Yeah. And not as like a sign of defiance because
he's like, no, I ain't going down there without my weapons. There might be space squids down there. I have very bad experiences with those.
Yeah. So they do a good job with that. And they do a good job of making his training feel impactful despite how short of a time he's actually there. But at the same time, how short he's actually there for is still a problem to me. He's not there for a long time. Because if you line up the timelines...
No, and that's kind of why he got his butt kicked.
Yeah, and that's kind of why he got his butt kicked. But then how does he get so good in... I don't know how he trained himself to get so good by the Return of the Jedi.
Yeah,
but
so there's some.
I mean, it's better than the problem that Ruby had because I think we talked about this before. Is that at least with Star Wars, we just talked about this in the last episode of Ruby. I just complained about this. So overall, I would prefer the way Star Wars does, in that things happen too quickly, but they do kind of explain it, and it's because you got to get shit done. Whereas Ruby thinks you got to explain everything, and now they're going to slow everything down too much. So I'd rather have Star Wars problem of
and we don't really know, and we don't really know what Luke was doing in between Empire and Return of the Jedi, aside from becoming a Jedi Knight. Like that's all we know.
Like how without I mean, you must have been talking to Obi-Wan and. That's the only way they can do it. He is very powerful.
So
at least they have that. And at least they do show, when we get to Return of the Jedi, they do a fantastic job of showing how much better he got. I mean, he kicks the shit out of Vader by the end of that fight.
Yeah.
Whereas he loses pretty... and what's funny is like the choreography for the lightsaber fighting gets better each time as well. It's not just that Luke gets better. Yeah. They do a better job each... And, I mean... the lightsaber duel in this one is it's so much better than
and it's also a bit one-sided. Like, oh my goodness, it's a curb stomp, really. But we'll get to that later. Do we have anything to add with the Battle of Hoth other than the Imperial walkers, as impractical as they are, look freaking cool?
They do look freaking cool,
and the way that they defeat them is actually kind of like so creative. It's one of those things that like. Why haven't movies done this before?
Yeah.
Well, why is this the go-to example now?
I think Star Wars does an amazing job, and this is something they do continue to do well in the prequels, though maybe not as well as the original trilogy. I think the original trilogy, one of the reasons why it's so good is that they do an amazing job with the battles of making them feel so like urgent, and there's so much going on. Even though the prequels, like, they don't have all the resources that in the original trilogy, they don't have all the resources that they have in the prequels that they do by the time they have the prequels, but they still feel so urgent, and they cut between different things so well. Like even when you get to the Return of the Jedi, like. Yeah, there's 3 battles going on, but man, they feel so well integrated.
I think
it's incredible.
Yeah, they feel like they flow together pretty well.
And it's true with the Hoth scene too. The Hoth scene is, I think, the reason why the Hoth scene is cool, and it's kind of almost better than the Death Star attack run, even though I prefer New Hope to Empire Strikes Back overall as a film. The fact that they kind of cut between. The people, the troops on the ground and the towers, or not the towers, whatever their laser cannons are.
The ion cannons.
The ion cannon shooting out. The people in the hangar, still in the base, still.
It adds a lot of suspense, and I think.
Yeah.
Well, what you were kind of touching on, the reason is that the Rebels, and we know this from the opening title crawl of A New Hope, and it carries on until after Return of the Jedi, the Rebels are hopelessly outmatched, outclassed, outgunned from beginning to end, and you see that especially well with the Battle of Hoth, where they had like the little turret towers and little guys with pea shooters, and the Empire's literally crushing them with these giant behemoth AT-ATs.
And that's one of my biggest problems with... Oh, sorry, go ahead, Robert.
Well, yeah, and they find out that the Empire is coming for them, and they don't even talk about...
Yeah, it's not about holding. It's about, we got to get out of here.
We got to go. Yeah, we got to go. We got to start evacuating yesterday because they know we're here. Yeah,
that's actually something I think that Star Wars Rebels does actually a pretty good job of, because they really show you how tiny the rebellion is and how hard it is for them to gain supporters. Something actually the Rebels does very well. I've realized that I think the only reason people hate Dave Filoni that has any merit is because they hate the Clone Wars movie. But honestly, he more than made up for it with the TV show.
There's some lore stuff that he kind of shanked with Clone Wars that I'm not happy about, and I know a lot of people aren't happy about.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm a huge Clone Wars apologist, but
that only matters if you're one of those losers that reads the books.
Which most of the books are all non-canon anymore.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
It kind of doesn't really matter.
It doesn't give me back the hours I spent reading them.
Yeah. I mean, hey, I don't regret reading the Obi-Wan Kenobi books. Those are great.
The Jedi Apprentice.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I think you're the first person I've met that has actually also read those.
What was his rival? I forget. He had like the jock rival guy. Remember there was like a rival he had. I forget. I gotta remember.
The only one I actually remember is the second one with the guy named Xanatos. That was Qui-Gon's previous apprentice.
Yep. But okay, so what I was trying to say though is it is actually one of my problems with Rogue One, because the Rebel force that shows up to Scarif looks really powerful to me. And I kind of feel like it shouldn't have looked as badass as it did. Like, there was a fuckload of ships that showed up. Like, yeah, they got out, and then they had to scatter when they got out. But, like, it's almost like kind of a bad thing that the Rebels, like, kicked so much ass in that fight, to be honest.
Yeah, there's certainly been. But I think they make up for it with stuff like the Darth Vader scene and...
I think so.
Using the Death Star to do something other than blow up planets, to just blow up cities. I think kind of added a lot of layers to that.
I still think I think I like Rogue One more than you do, Media. So I mean, I'm gonna defend the movie overall, but that was just one thing that's like, because I think they do a good job with that in Rebels as well as keeping the rebellion looking like such an underdog, actually. And spoiler alerts, like in season 3, which I'm just about to start watching season 4, because I didn't realize it's so much shorter than season 3. They lose hard at the end of season 3, like big time.
I bet.
They keep that going, and like they have to, like, one of the plot points is them like going somewhere to steal like 12 Y-wings. Like that's a plot point, like to go steal old Clone War technology. Like, and they get like 12 of them. That's what they're trying to do. Like, that's a big plot point in season 3. Like that, and that's good though. That shows like just how outmatched they are, and that's something they do well in The Empire Strikes Back. Is it's basically the whole thing of to temper the rebellion looking like they did such a great job.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and then they do a really good job establishing the stakes, establishing like what the rebels are doing to help keep the Imperial walkers back, and then you see General Veers blow up the shield generator, and it kind of sinks in like, oh, now they don't have that protection anymore, and they're all doomed.
They're blown up. Yeah, all they've got now is the ion shield, and also even the fact, like, as creative as it was that they used tow cables to bring down the AT-ATs. The fact that, like, they had to do that they don't have any guns that are big enough to dent those things. They just have pretty much all they can do is disable them, is like just another testament again to like you said, how outgunned they are, that like they have nothing that can take down these massive things. They just have to, they have to get, like, they kind of had to get creative and stuff like that to bring them down. So yeah, I thought that was good.
Yeah, that's both, like, that was one of my favorite scenes and moments in Rogue One, and also one of my least favorite moments in Rogue One. the rocket to the face of the AT-AT, and then it just looks back. Like, that was so awesome, and then it follows up with just a Y-Wing bombing it to death. Like, oh. Why didn't they use these on Hoth?
Yeah.
If they already had them.
By the way, Brook Chun, that's the guy.
Yeah.
That's the Obi-Wan rival guy.
You looked it up?
Yeah, I had to look it up.
Yeah.
I was not going to remember. Yeah.
So, the Empire, like, with the Battle of Hoth, and you feel this for the rest of the movie, and kind of the rest of the trilogy, really. Or not, well, up until about a third of the way through Return of the Jedi, because this sucker punch on Hoth literally breaks up the main crew to go on their own plot lines for the rest of the movie, and up until about 20 minutes through Return of the Jedi.
Yeah.
With Hoth, or with Han, Leia, Chewie, and 3PO escaping in the Falcon, and trying to just outrun the Empire.
Yeah. Or having to hide from them inside of an asteroid and stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah, that was an interesting scene too. I mean, I gotta admit, okay, so I didn't really pay attention when I was younger. But I gotta admit, man, I think I said this in the during our last review thing is, man, I love Han and Leia. They are awesome. Like, I ship the fuck out of them. It's like, and I never really paid attention to how overt it was when I was younger. I didn't really, get any of that stuff. But man, they really hit it over the head. Like, that's the same kind of thing I was talking about when I talked about Avatar. Like, man, they really hit the Katang shit over the head, which I was fine with. It was great. And it's the same thing they're doing with Han and Leia. And these both just add to my argument. I hate when people, especially in like the Ruby fandom or an anime group, say like shippers ruin everything. I'm sorry, but like romance is usually a major part of a lot of everything. So fuck you, you're wrong. So this is like just another example of that. And I have to admit, like, they do a really good job of just, I don't know, they just are really super funny together. I love it because I think they both act it well, and I think it's hilarious
they
how
have really good chemistry together.
They do have really good chemistry together, and you can actually see that. And it's, while they didn't like plot like write out how they kind of fell for each other, the actors did such a good job with it that it makes sense to me.
Kind of helps that they were.
They allude to things, what happened that led to them. Yeah.
The "I love you, I know" line. Oh my god, I know it's that's the best thing. It's like Lucas never would have written something that awesome. That's has to be an improv from.
Irvin Kershner was the original line was like, I love you too, and I was like, that doesn't feel right. So him and Irvin Kershner, the director of the movie, they kept on like going, like Irvin Kershner, Harrison Ford, and Carrie Fisher kept on going back and forth in a circle trying to find the line that works, and then eventually Harrison Ford just got fed. I was like, I know, like, there you go. That's it. That's the line.
And it's so perfect in that moment too, because he's like literally about to get frozen and possibly die. It's like still being a fucking badass. Like he can't not be a badass. It's amazing, and it's consistent with his character. And I think that works. Because the same thing I said last time, that like Han Solo is just Harrison Ford. Like he just playing himself. He's like, yes, I am this cool. Deal with it.
And so
that's why everybody loves him.
So there's a couple scenes with them trying to escape from the Empire, like the asteroid belt, and then they take that break inside the giant worm that nearly eats them. And then they.
And that scene was good because of the Leia Han shit that was going on the whole time. It was hilarious.
And another thing that I also liked about that line, I know, is because Han's been trying to basically spent this whole movie trying to convince Leia, you love me, you love me, and stuff like that. Pretty much throughout the entire thing, he's like, you love me, you know that, like, how you feel. I know how you feel. Just admit it. But So I thought that was another thing that made that work.
Yeah, it does, and I think it's actually pretty compelling and it's enjoyable. Actually, it's cool because it's a good contrast between that and what Luke's going through in his training scene. So it's nice to have those contrasts be done so well, I think.
Yeah. And they do the And they do the kind of the two separate plots thing pretty well, almost to the point where you kind of have a hard time figuring out which one is the B plot, which is a really which I think really works. So,
and I would even argue that there almost kind of is not a B plot.
Yeah.
I know that Luke's plot is whatever Luke's
really...
doing is always technically the A plot, but it's sort of like that's actually one of the things that Lord of the Rings did so well is that technically what Frodo's doing is the A plot, but you never really feel that way in the books or in the movies. It's so balanced and like all these characters matter I think that's fantastic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it also helps that what ends up being over. Is the game over? Sorry, it's Game 7 of the World Series, and I'm game play-by-play. Yeah.
I'm also in LA. I'm in Orange County.
Yeah.
I actually hate the Dodgers.
Oh well, good news. Houston's winning.
Okay, good, cool. I'm actually I'm an Angels fan, so because I'm Orange County.
Yeah. So
I'm actually Orange County, so that's the difference.
So it helps out that what ends up being the villain plot with the Han plot line has everything to do with Luke.
Yeah,
Vader wants Luke, and he knows how to get him. Because it's kind of the same way he got.
Yeah, that's what's great about. I mean, both episodes 5 and 6 do this really extremely well, in that all the plots are so connected, and they've connected them all the way through. Like 5 and 6 kind of go together even more than. It's like 4 is a little bit more standalone than 5 and 6. And
well, because 4 was a big question mark whether or not it was going to be successful.
Yes, sure.
Like George Lucas made it to where like he can't make this movie happen. He's just going to cut his losses. In Empire, he kind of had a bit of the same philosophy, but he had enough money saved up by then, and he was not only was he working on this, but he was also a producer on Indiana Jones, which had Steven Spielberg, who is a much more certain to make hundreds of millions.
Yeah, he was more of a sure thing,
and also Harrison Ford, which didn't hurt in the slightest, of course.
Nope,
but
it does.
I mean, and I actually argue having rewatched the Indiana Jones films, man, Star Wars is way better than Indiana Jones, and I'm a total history.
Yes, but I think Indiana Jones is a better character than Han Solo.
Yes, I agree with that too, but the films are not. They're not. One film series is clearly better than the other.
Yeah.
It's not even, honestly. It's not even close to me. I was like, the Indiana Jones when I rewatched them, they did not hold up that well to me, to be honest. Like,
second one doesn't hold up very well. The other two, I think, are still two of the greatest movies of the '80s. But the second one has a lot.
One was the Raiders of the Lost Ark and the Last Crusade.
Yeah, Last Crusade, and then the second one is Temple of Doom, which has its moments and has some great stuff in it. Shalima. But it's a lot more. It's a lot more corny and cheesy and weird.
It reminds me too much of The Mummy.
Well, that's the movie that the Mummy wished it was.
Yeah, pretty much.
I think that's kind of the point. The Mummy's kind of funny.
And then the new Mummy wishes it was the Brendan Fraser movie.
That is sad.
Yeah, I watched the new Mummy.
I just watched the Nostalgia Critic review of it on my way home.
It was actually all right. Yeah. It was neither as scary as I was, because they kind of made it seem like scarier than it was, and then it wasn't. Because like the first Mummy was not scary. Like the Brendan Fraser one's not scary at all.
Well, no, it's an action movie. It's a 1999 action movie.
Yeah, and it felt like they were trying to make it look like this one was actually going to be kind of scary, and then it fucking wasn't at all. So it's like,
yeah. Anyway,
so they do a good job crossing the plots over. Like they all have to do with each other.
Yeah, Han gets frozen in carbonite because Darth Vader wants to test it out before he does it to Luke.
Yeah.
Which the only question is why. That was one of the questions I asked. Why does he have to freeze Luke in carbonite exactly?
Because he's too powerful to just throw in a cell.
But then they do that in all the other Star Wars
things. To talk to him and like he wants
always in cells. Like in all the other Star Wars things, people are always getting locked up in cells and stuff like that. So
that
was one of the weaker things.
Film should be stronger than logic, dude.
I mean, because they because for the most part they do a very good job of explaining everything. So I just kind of felt like that was kind of a weakness because they didn't actually explain it as well as they explained everything else.
Yeah,
I guess that's.
They don't actually really explain what carbonite is either.
I don't have a problem with that, to be honest.
Yeah, I don't either. If you guys want to know in the lore, it's actually the gas that is all around Bespin. Tiban gas, something gas. It's the main fuel source for Tabana gas. And it's used in it's used in blasters, and Bespin is one of the biggest hubs for this gas. And in order to transport it, they have to freeze it in carbonite to ship it off, and then it gets thawed out and harvested that way on other planets and processed and stuff. And yeah, it's all very interesting world building lore stuff that you get from the books.
Yeah, I only know that from what's it called? Fuck. The video game Star Wars Rogue Squadron.
Yeah, Rogue Squadron.
I know
they also talk about it in Jedi Academy. They probably talk about it in a lot of Star Wars games.
Oh, I'm sure, yeah.
The Star Wars games like to take all the movie locations and make them like the most important planets in the entire galaxy.
Even though Lando pretty much says that Bespin is really small or something like that, I think.
Well, the colony itself is small because it's a mining colony, and so most of the people there are just Tabana gas miners, and it's only got one city, one massive floating city, but still, Cloud City is the only like city in Bespin, which I mean, kind of happens when you don't even have a surface.
Yeah.
When you're a gas planet akin to Jupiter.
Let's see, when you're a more temperate version of Jupiter,
Yep.
So we get a lot of interesting stuff in Cloud City as well. We already talked about Dagobah quite a bit. Like, Luke learns how to use the Force. You got that really excellent scene where Yoda pulls the X-Wing out of the swamp after Luke like tries and fails. Like, it's impossible. I give up.
Yeah. And it is also that good thing. Like this.
And Yoda's like, that's why you fail.
Yeah, and you talked about
that attitude.
Yeah, you kind of talked about this, that like people complain about Rey and her.
Yeah.
And like how their complaints about her. Yoda makes it very clear in this scene that the only limits to what you can do with the Force is pretty much all in your head. Those are the limits, and maybe.
Yeah, and Red brought this up in her Mary Sue video. To cite overly sarcastic productions again, which if you're not subscribed to them, subscribe to them. It's some of the best stuff you'll see on YouTube.
They're fantastic.
Where she explains that like the whole point of the movie is that these characters grew up hearing the stories of Luke, Han, and Leia, and Rey would have grown up with the stories of Jedis and what they can do, and would experiment with their powers in that scene, and that's what she's doing. She's saying what she can do with the Force, and that's why she's able to. That's why she does the things she does, in at least that part of the movie.
And how she does, yeah, exactly. And so, that's a very good scene there of just giving us an idea of like what one can do with the Force and stuff like that, how powerful it is. And we also get that we didn't talk about the scene in the cave though with where Luke goes.
That's one of my favorite scenes in Star Wars.
Yeah,
I think a
nice bit of it was a nice bit of foreshadowing and just a nice character moment for Luke. That moment of, oh, this.
Yeah, I think my next top 10 Tuesday is going to be like top 10 favorite Star Wars moments, and that's going to be one of them.
Ooh.
Yeah.
The cave. Remember what you learned in the cave. Remember your failure at the cave, because Luke fails here.
Oh, big time!
Because he goes in aggressive and
symbolism.
Picks a fight. Yeah, exactly. And then
he draws his. First of all, he took his weapons, which Yoda told him not to. Second off, he draws his lightsaber first.
Yeah,
which is also a big no-no.
Remember that?
Yeah, and later on in Cloud City, he does it again.
Yes,
and that's
like how
this
was the big thing. I think George Lucas intended this on all the Star Wars movies, the person who draws their lightsaber first loses. I think the only exception might be the Ben Kenobi versus Darth Vader fight in A New Hope. I think Vader already had his lightsaber out and ready before Ben Kenobi even got there.
I'm trying to figure out if that holds up in the Phantom Menace with what happened.
Oh, Darth Maul definitely drew his lightsaber first.
But
in fact, it goes with the music too.
And Obi-Wan, though, is what I'm wondering about. Like, I guess what I'm wondering right now is, did Qui-Gon or Obi-Wan first and stuff like that?
I think Qui-Gon opens it first. It's very quick. It's like Darth Maul's like, and then Qui-Gon was like, yeah.
I'll have to check that out.
Yeah, I'll look out for it when I watch Phantom Menace again. Yeah, but I know it's that in Revenge of the Sith is a big one because Anakin like does that massive backflip, turns on his lightsaber, and Obi-Wan just turns it on in time to block in. Again with General Grievous drawing all 4 lightsabers and yeah.
And I think they did kind of the same thing in Return of the Jedi, that Darth Vader and Luke, if I recall correctly, they both drew at the same time.
Yes, they did, because maybe you noticed that in the first couple times you saw the lightsabers, and so now it's like, ooh, the stakes are high because you don't know who's going to win just based off of who drew.
They both win, but yeah.
They keep that very consistent. That's even something they keep consistent in Rebels and things like that. It's kept consistent very much.
So thirdly,
even through to the very last Obi-Wan versus Maul fight, which actually finally happened, by the way.
Yeah, I saw that. I saw that a few weeks ago,
which was actually fucking dope.
Yeah,
big shout outs to Dave Filoni for that scene, actually, because of the move specifically that he kills him. What was happening? Oh my god, it was so good.
Yeah. So also in that scene, after Luke kills quote unquote Vader, or the image of Vader, Vader's mask explodes, and it's Luke
face underneath,
which I wish I would have brought this up in my MIS when I was talking about the scene in Return of the Jedi, but it wasn't something I was thinking about when I was writing the script for that video. But that gets paid off in Return of the Jedi when Luke hacks Vader's arm off, and sees it's robotic, and then looks at his hands like, this is what that vision was about. If I kill Vader, I kill Vader, I will literally become him.
Exactly. Yep.
Or become the next Vader. I will become the next Space Hitler.
Yeah.
So that's powerful, and that also foreshadows the plot twist to end all plot twists.
Yeah.
Which I think is the next kind of plot point I have, which is the plot line started to merge. Han's frozen in carbonite. Luke gets the vision that his friends are in danger. Goes off, even though Yoda told him not to. Listen to Yoda, kid. This is why you lost your hand.
Yeah.
And Luke runs off to Cloud City to find them and save them. But in doing so, that's exactly what Vader was planning on doing. He falls right into Vader's trap, and now he's in the carbon freezing chamber with Vader, and Vader's just swatting like he's a fly.
Yeah, pretty much. Just like,
oh my god, impressive, most impressive. And Vader's just toying with them.
Pretty much, yeah.
He is.
Throughout most of that fight. Like, you can also tell that the longer Luke actually lasts, the more aggressive Vader gets.
Yeah.
Like it goes from just pushing Luke around with his lightsaber to actually like using the Force to try battering him around to like when Luke nips his shoulder, Vader's like, okay, okay, I'm taking this seriously now.
All right, come here, you little shit.
Yeah,
pretty much. And you kind of get the idea here that he is kind of testing Luke, because he does have that thing at the beginning where he's all like, okay, maybe the Emperor was wrong about you. Maybe you're not worth the trouble. And like that, Luke goes at it again, and he's all like, okay.
Not to derail the conversation, but that is something I want to... And I'll address it later when we talk about special editions. Okay. Yeah, about the Emperor. But yeah, Vader starts like taking it seriously, he manages to cut Luke's hand off, and it's it's really visceral too. Like you kind of feel it.
Yeah.
Yep. I mean, I'd say that this is my complaint from the previous film is the guy blue one, but then they retcon it into the. But I mean, I like the retcon in this case, so I'm okay with it. I'm surprised that wasn't something they tried to fix in the special edition, though, because considering how much he likes to retcon things in the special edition, why did he have to retcon Han shooting first, but he didn't feel like retconning the guy's arm getting cut off, but then have blood? Like they could just, I'm sure they could have retconned that. Yeah, that would have been easy. I feel like, but whatever.
Yeah, but, whatever.
Yeah. And
so the reveal. Vader starts taunting Luke and trying to show him like, yeah, what I just did to you, that's because of the power of the dark side. Come join us. We have cookies.
Yeah.
We have cookies and massive power boosts when we're angry.
Yeah. Yep.
And then yellow eyes.
Don't forget those earlier.
Don't forget that sick as fuck yellow eyes. Like the yellow eyes are dope.
Yeah. And he tells them earlier on, only your hate can destroy me.
Yeah. I'm too powerful for any Jedi. You have to embrace the dark side to get the power boost necessary to destroy me, which might actually be accurate.
I also feel like that's like really cheap.
It might actually be accurate because considering what Luke did in Return of the Jedi, he did get kind of a power boost from his anger, and that's what ended up giving him the edge.
Yeah, that's.
But I kind of feel like that's like a cheapo, like cop out DLC. Like, if you get the anger, you get the power boost.
Yeah.
Go to the dark side. Yeah. I feel like that's some cheap ass.
Well, it's incentive to go renegade.
No, it is. No, I'm trying to be funny and failing. Like, no, it's true that like, but no, it's because that's. I mean, I played football for years, and it's true that like anger does give you a power boost. It just does. It's straight up. Yeah. There's no question about it. When I got mad, and I got mad a lot because I played on really crappy. Spoiler alert! I was actually really good at football, and
except that part.
I was really good at football. I started freshman year. I was starting fullback on a team that ended up winning our state title. And by the way, California's really fucking good at football. And then I quit because I didn't like it anymore. But I was the starting fullback, and I get mad because in junior high I'd play on shitty teams, and I would get mad and then I would kick everybody's ass. And it's true, you do get a power boost. Yeah, it's 100% true. So it's not like it's something that's unrelatable to people in real life, but then they kind of improve it with like the Jedi fantasy version of power boosting due to anger. So which is something I think that Star Wars does well in general, is that it's stuff that's kind of relatable, but then they just kind of tweak it and make it more extreme.
Yeah, they do make it. The dark side is way more potent than the One Ring from Lord of the Rings.
Yeah. Yes, it is.
Like you just kill one person out of anger, you're done.
Yeah,
it's more tangible too.
Which is kind of odd because the Force isn't a physical object, whereas the One Ring is.
I know, but I mean that's one of the things George Lucas did do very well.
Yeah, and that is something that they also kind of bring up in. They brought up earlier on where like Luke asks Yoda, is the dark side stronger? And Yoda's like, no, it's just basically says, no, it's just a shortcut and stuff like that. Like that is part of
the quick and easy path.
Yeah,
the wide path, as the Bible says. Yeah. And it kind of gets explained. I really love the Darth Bane books, and in my heart, they are still canon because Darth Bane is in Clone Wars. And they make references to stuff that happened in the books.
Yeah.
So in my heart, the Darth Bane books are still canon. In fact, in my heart, a lot of the Old Republic stuff is still canon because it's so far removed from anything that happened in Star Wars and what they're doing in the comics and stuff right now. What Marvel's doing with the comics, it's so far removed from any of that in your mind it can still be canon until they actually make it into movies. In which case, things always get lost in adaptation. So take it or leave it. Which is another reason why I'm glad that they kind of nixed the expanded universe, because it allows them to make the adaptations of movies and have the movies be canon.
Yeah, I was gonna say because I think I'm good with again. That's another reason why I approve of what Disney did is because they actually do try to keep a lot of the same things. Like again, Thrawn is the biggest example of they're literally having the same guy who wrote the now non-canon Thrawn books.
Yeah.
Right, the new canon Thrawn books. The same guy.
Tiberzon?
And
is that his name?
I forget the guy's. Yeah, Timothy Zahn. Timothy Zahn. There you go.
Tiberzon is the character from Empire at War.
Timothy Zahn. And
I was about to say, the author's name is Tiberzon, and that's a Star Wars name if I've ever heard one. Like, this is a Star Wars name. The guy's name, the author's name is Timothy Zahn.
And they also included Thrawn in Rebels, and he's awesome in Rebels.
That's what I've heard.
Yeah.
I have
he's
not seen
incredible in Rebels. You got it.
I've not seen that far into Rebels.
Rebels is actually pretty fantastic.
Yeah.
And like you said, the whole Darth Bane thing in the Clone Wars, which is again another really good thing.
The way it's explained, Darth Bane is that the dark side rules on individualistic rules, where the more people that are on the dark side, the thinner that power is because it gets spread out, and so it's best to keep it at 2 people, the master and apprentice. 2 there should be no more, no less. Yada yada yada. That whole nutshell. That way the power is focused as much as it can, whereas the light side kind of comes from, it is more collectivistic, and instead of coming from like above, it actually comes from more the heart and soul of people. And so the more light side users there are, the stronger it gets. Which is why the Sith could never beat the Jedi in an extended war. Because they kept on like trying to just recruit more and more dark side and just got weaker and weaker. And so the only way that the Sith could beat the Jedi is by actually using more underhanded tactics like Order 66.
Yeah.
And the Darth Bane books lays the groundwork on that, like, brilliantly. Guy who wrote it, Dave I have no idea how to pronounce his name. I always say Carpetian.
Maybe.
Yeah, Dave Carpetian. He's the guy who also wrote Knights of the Old Republic. He's the guy who wrote those games as well. So he's a really good writer, and he knows the Star Wars stuff, and I love the way it's explained there. And you get echoes of that with what Yoda says about the Jedi and the Sith and the differences therein, which doesn't get explained a lot here. It gets explained a lot more in the prequels when we're actually dealing with the Jedi Order at its peak. But yeah, you definitely get hints of that with Yoda saying stuff like, I've trained hundreds of Jedi Knights in my time.
Yep.
So, going back to the lightsaber fight in the plot twist, and you get that line, Luke's like, I'll never join you. And then Vader has one last little plea to try to convince him, like, Obi-Wan never told you what happened to your father. And Luke says, you told me enough, he told me you killed him, which, that's what Obi-Wan said. That's what Ben Kenobi said. And Vader's like, no, I am your father. And every single pair of pants in all those theaters cracked themselves simultaneously. And then it kind of ruined plot twist forever.
Kind of, yeah.
Like, no other plot twist has been able to outdo that. And it's been so, like, rehashed and parodied and stuff to where now it's, like, a joke.
Yeah.
Until, I have to admit, and as much as I hate the guy, Shamalama Ding Dong's plot twist in...
Well, that's a completely different type of twist. That's a twist that, like, they give you a twist halfway through, and it's actually like if you watch it the second time and you know what to look for, it's actually like really overt. It's one of those that the only way plot twists work now is if it's like really subtle about it, but at the same time, you go back and watch the movie, you're like slapping yourself in the face for not noticing that when Haley Joel Osment says sometimes they don't know that they're even ghosts. The camera is like zooming in on Bruce Willis's face. Like you don't notice that the first time you watch it.
Yeah, that's me with the Prestige.
Yeah, the Prestige does that too. Like, the first shot you see is like an army of hats in the middle of the woods, and then you don't even remember that by the time you're like, oh, clones.
Yeah. And also with like Christian Bale's whole secret, like the first time that he appears in his future wife's room, and I'm just like, dang it, I know what happened. Because the first time I saw the Prestige, I started watching it like halfway through, and then I saw the. So like when I first saw it, I was like, dang it, I would have loved this scene if I didn't know the plot twist.
That was a good movie, actually.
That is a fantastic movie.
Really good.
It's a really good movie, actually.
But yeah,
it was on my top 10.
Right?
Yeah,
it's actually on my top 10. It's on Netflix right now.
It was on my top 10 for that decade, I'm sure.
Yeah, it was.
It's a good film. It's a good film.
Yeah.
But in a way, the I Am Your Father plot twist is kind of, I don't know. Nowadays, it does feel like everybody kind of expects some sort of plot twist, and so it's kind of hard to trick people in a way.
It's not. So here's my problem with it. It's not the plot twist I have a problem with. The whole thing about I don't have it. It's great. That is great. The only thing I have a problem with is how it's delivered. That's the only thing I don't like. Here's the thing. There is actually, and I don't exactly remember this because this was back in sophomore year of high school where this was explained to me from my honors English honors English teacher. And basically what he talked about, because we were studying like mostly really old literature. That's what we did at my school. That's what we did. So it was like we read like the Book of Job and stuff like that, and like ancient Greek plays and things like that's what we would read.
Yeah.
And I think we read the Odyssey then.
Ooh,
so
that's a rough read, but if you want to know how Western storytelling works, it's like a requirement. It's a requirement. Yeah. Like that and Journey to the West for all you anime fans.
Yeah, all the animus. So basically the way he explained it is there's actually levels to how to reveal a plot twist, and that is not how you do it. Basically he did the dumbest way to do it, which is literally have the plot twist, like the character like, you know, take a rock and just like throw it at the guy and say like, look, okay, here's the plot twist. That's not how you write a plot twist.
Because like
I mean, I can kind of see that in there's some like psychology stuff that goes along with that. Because this is a dialogue scene, and that's like Darth Vader's last trump card he has to try to convince Luke, to the point, and child psychologists actually like approached Lucas either during filming of this or after it had premiered. I don't know when, but they actually like told him like Luke would have no reason to believe Vader.
Yeah,
like Luke would have no reason to believe Vader. Vader's not trustworthy, and this just the way it just got dropped on his lap like a bomb. Luke would be in denial for a very long time over it, which is why in Return of the Jedi, one of the first things he does is ask Yoda, "Is it true? Is he really my father?" And you're just like, "Yeah, your daddy is Vader."
Yeah, and he does kind of, and I do understand that like Vader does kind of bait him into it, basically by just randomly bringing up his father, saying, "By the way, Obi-Wan never told you what happened to your dad, did he?" It's all like,
that also
does this matter?
Yeah,
like,
why does that even matter?
Yeah,
I don't really understand,
I understand that. Like that did feel like kind of. Yeah, I do understand that. Like, so yeah, I do understand that. Like the delivery and the lead into it did feel
was really.
They were I think they were trying too hard to hide it. Like one of you alluded to it. Even the production crew did not know. The only people who knew were like George Lucas, and Irvin Kershner, and James Earl Jones. Because the line in the script was Obi-Wan killed your father, which in itself would have been an amazing plot twist. Because it would have been like, okay, why? And why did he lie? Like that would have. I think if that were the line, Luke would have actually turned. Eventually, like he would have turned by the end of Return of the Jedi.
Perhaps, yeah.
If that were the case, and so that's what Mark Hamill was actually reacting to. It wasn't until afterwards that found out that
that's part of the problem. Is I also kind of almost feel like the Obi-Wan killing his father thing And it would have been a better plot twist a little bit, just saying.
It wouldn't have been as big of a plot twist because again, and I think you gotta kind
I
of
didn't say as big. I said better, not
well.
as big.
I think that kind of plot twist was all over the place in the 70s, though.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a good point. Never mind. You're right about that.
Yeah,
That's actually true.
yeah, like that. Yeah. That's why, like, that was the easy plot twist to do back then, and now the easy plot twist is like, no, I am your father.
Friend who killed your father.
Yeah,
yeah. And,
like I think Dirty Harry, like I think 3 out of 5 Dirty Harry movies had a plot twist like that.
Yeah.
Like, oh no, this guy actually did it.
Yeah, and I think so. I think I do agree that like as far as delivery, this was kind of weak, and part of the reason that I'm iffy on this reveal is more just because this is a retcon. Like this was, or in episode 4 when Obi-Wan said Darth Vader
yeah, I mean it's
when they said Darth Vader killed your father, like they meant it and stuff like that. Like that was the plan. So this was kind of a retcon, and like
yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure about that. And George Lucas he says he's been very open about this, but what you just said it is a valid point that George Lucas might actually just be lying to us and might have just been lying to us all these decades. He might not have actually planned it. And I did want to address, no, George Lucas does not know German. It is not Darth Vader. It is not the German word for father. It's spelled differently. It's pronounced differently. And Darth Vader is supposed to be play on invader.
Yeah, and so and that was
that's just a coincidence. The whole German connection is just a coincidence.
Yeah, not like Weishni. That's on purpose, but Darth Vader is not.
Yeah, and so I do, and so that is kind of what I feel about this. Is so like I do kind of feel like this was a bit of a retcon, and that does kind of irk me a little bit. But at the same time, I'm more irked by Obi-Wan's excuse in the next movie when he's
from a certain point of view.
Yeah,
that was kind of lame. That was very lame.
That was BS, and
that's lame in a funny way though. Like I laugh. Yeah, I laugh every time it gets to that point. Like, oh, you.
Yeah,
I mean, it is a very Obi-Wan thing to say. Like, hey, I suppose all the characters.
Yeah, like maybe
fit him, but. It is dumb. It's dumb.
Yeah, well, maybe he's still in denial.
I was more upset with that cop out than I was with this.
Like, and the way I always rationalize is that is the only way Obi-Wan can see it to where he can actually live with himself.
Yeah.
As if he treats Darth Vader as a completely separate entity. Because otherwise, he's responsible.
Yeah.
It's his failure.
And Darth Vader does say the name Anakin Skywalker no longer means to me. So
even Vader treats it as a completely different entity.
And I have to admit, and that's another thing they do really well in the TV show. It's something that they do way better in the TV show than they do in the films, in the prequels.
With Ahsoka. With Ahsoka's part.
Not just Ahsoka, but specifically with just talking about the relationship between Obi-Wan and Anakin.
I haven't seen anything like that from Rebels.
So well in
Clone Wars,
In Clone Wars,
no. Clone Wars, they have a lot more time, and the prequels and stuff, they have to more tell it because there's so much going on in those movies. We don't have time to build camaraderie relationships.
Which is dumb.
We'll get to that in a few weeks.
Yeah, we will, I guess.
But the other thing that I really liked about this reveal is James Earl Jones' performance. We talked about this, how James Earl Jones just kills this.
Yeah, it's pretty chilling.
Just kills Darth Vader. And I really like what James Earl Jones does because when he delivers this line and like everything that falls after in this movie, when he's reaching out to Luke and saying, we can do this as father and son, it felt Darth Vader suddenly felt very human to me. Like this was a really, like to me, the way he delivered it really felt like a father reaching out to his son, even though like he's still a very dark character. And so that was another thing that I really like about this is how it it does a really good job of beginning Darth Vader's eventual return to the light. And so
and
that's something that that's just another part of this that I really like, and that's why
it's also really easy to take it for granted because we were all really young when we first saw this.
Yeah,
I think
and because it's all
you were 15.
It took me a while to see this movie.
Wow,
I was like
7
4.
or 6.
I was like 4.
Yeah, I don't even know.
I couldn't have been more than 4.
But yeah, I was in my teens when I finally saw this movie. But anyway,
wow. Okay, I was a lot younger. That's interesting. That's really
and I'd seen like the prequels and stuff like that, so I knew what was gonna happen, which kind of sucked.
You saw the prequel? Oh, that sucks. Okay.
Yeah, that sucked. I knew what was gonna happen.
Because I remember
I still appreciate this
because I saw Star Wars Episode 1 when it came out, and I remember being excited for it because I had already seen the other Star Wars films. And when did Star Wars Episode 1 come out? 1999?
Yeah, Episode 1 was 1999.
Okay, so I was 8 years or 9 years old at the oldest because I was born in 1991. So
I was 5 when it first came out, and I turned 6 that summer.
Yeah, so
because it came out in May.
So that means I saw it when I was like probably 5 or 6.
I saw it on my 6th birthday.
No, I mean the other ones, the earlier ones.
Every time I always go to the movies for my birthday. And so in 1999, the movie I saw for my birthday was Phantom Menace. In 2002, Attack of the Clones, 2005. Yes, they all came out in May. Every Star Wars movie until The Force Awakens came out in May.
Okay, gotcha. Okay,
but yeah.
And what was I gonna say? Oh yeah, a good indication like how and why this works and kind of why it doesn't work.
So I was 7 when the movie came out then.
Yeah,
so,
I
had to see when I was 5.
Yeah, there's a viral video on Facebook of kids reacting to that moment in Empire Strikes Back for the first time. These kids are like 5, 6, 7 years old. They're the first time that they've seen it, and their reactions are priceless. Just honestly priceless. Just the look of just despair on their face and just like no, why? It's very much Luke's reaction.
And here's the thing, like I understand like why it had the impact it had, but I feel like literarily it's not as good as a result actually, because it's not really because it really does kind of come out of nowhere, and that's not actually good writing for something like that to come so out of nowhere. That's actually
I mean there is hints about it.
That is what Ruby would do. That is what Miles would do.
And there is hints about it, but maybe not enough hints. Really. And a lot of the hints is actually in that opening title crawl, which nobody reads the first time. Yeah. So going back to the very beginning, like why would Vader be kicking down all these doors just to look for Luke Skywalker? You think like in the front of your mind, in your mind you're thinking, oh, it's because he's the one who blew up the Death Star, but at the same time, that's actually supposed to be set up for the reveal that like this is why Vader cares so much.
Yeah, he's looking.
But they could have set it up more though. They could have set up the connection between them. They really should have had Luke ask a lot more questions about his father. Yeah, you know what I mean?
Like, leading up to it.
Questions
like the way they questioned
one guy. Why are we doing all this for this one guy? Like I know they're scared of Darth Vader, but
yeah. So like that's another thing, and so as a result, the way it should have been is Luke should have figured it out somehow. That's actually how you reveal a plot twist the best way possible.
Yeah. By the way,
that's actually why. And again, I fucking hate that I have to admit this. That's why the M. Night Shyamalan plot twist is actually literally it's a better plot twist.
Yes,
it is. And I hate M. Night Shyamalan.
That's a good movie, though. Like
it is a great movie.
It is a great movie.
Amazing.
It actually kind of made.
But that's.
Sixth Sense is one of those movies that, because of M. Night Shyamalan's latter-day output, I'm like, every time I turn it on, like, this isn't gonna hold up. This isn't gonna hold up, and then it holds up. Like, oh, thank God, it holds up.
And that's the problem. It's like, so that's the thing. That is actually the highest level of plot twist. The plot twist is never actually spoken of. Not once. It is never technically said what the plot twist is. That is the highest level of plot twist. You never actually... So the character figures it out themselves. And and the audience figures it out with them. That is the highest level of plot, and that's why that's so amazing. That's why that's actually the best plot twist. Just because the Darth Vader plot twist is the most famous doesn't make it the best. Just because Ruby's so popular doesn't make it a good show.
Well, yeah, and it kind of ruined plot twists for a long time, and filmmakers and storytellers had to find new ways to do plot twists, which is what M. Night Shyamalan and Chris Nolan and Dave Fincher, or rather, not really so much Dave Fincher as whoever wrote the books Dave Fincher always bases movies on. because Dave Fincher's a brilliant director, but he never writes his own scripts. So like Fight Club, Seven, Zodiac, those are all excellent movies, and he is a big reason why. But all he does is just pick really good movies to pick really good books to adapt movies into.
Yep.
Yeah.
Because I throw all three of those movies in as excellent plot twists. Especially Fight Club, because Fight Club Club's one of those movies that, like, the plot twist is just kind of so absurd, but then you go back and watch it, and you see all the little Brad Pitt spliced into various frames.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's
the plot twist of all times is The Unusual Suspects. But anyway, sorry, go ahead. Or The Usual Suspects. Anyway.
Yeah. See, The Usual Suspects. That is a very good one. And that's
that
was one
where
the plot twist is never actually explicitly stated.
Yeah. So
nobody ever says anything.
Yeah, I'm not as into The Usual Suspects, mostly because it was spoiled for me years before I ever watched the movie.
That sucks.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh man, no, watching it, it's an amazing plot twist. No, that's a technically, literally speaking, it's a better plot twist.
Yeah.
That's the thing, like they could have done that with Star Wars. It's not like they couldn't have done that.
I just think with
asked more questions and figured it out.
I just think with The Usual Suspects. I just think with The Usual Suspects, there wasn't enough other stuff there. Like, the only thing it really had going for it was that plot twist. As brilliant as a plot twist as it may have been, spoil the movie for someone, and it just kind of brings the movie down a lot.
Well, I actually liked the film though. Like, I actually really enjoyed the film. It's a good film overall too. But that's the thing is, like, the whole Vader-Luke relationship doesn't matter until all of a sudden it matters and it's his fault. That's not great, and that's why I have a problem with Empire Strikes Back. Like, if they built up that whole thing from as soon as, like, Luke interacts with, like, they should have built it up from the beginning more. I feel like that would have been a much better plot if they had done that.
I feel like they tried to set it up, but I do think that maybe a little more would have been good, because it is one of those, like, looking back now, you see where, like, they were dropping hints and stuff like that, making Luke this really important person for the Empire, but at the same time, you don't really make the connection that it's not the Empire that's after Luke, it's Darth Vader personally. So
yeah, they don't set that up well enough.
Yeah, and the Emperor kind of plays the pronoun game in the scene he's in.
Yeah,
the son of Skywalker lives. Bring him to me.
And as soon as Luke starts becoming a Jedi, why doesn't he ask more fucking Dad? Jesus Christ! Like, that's just dumb that he's not asking more questions.
Yeah, we'll probably touch on that more when we talk about Return of the Jedi. There's a bit of stuff like that going on in Return of the Jedi. A lot of stuff that they seem to be just skipping over for the sake of getting the plot started.
Honestly, you know what would have been the best, actually, is if they had him keep asking questions. They keep pointing out he gets beaten by Vader, just like what happens, and they don't actually. He figures it out on his own, like during the fight between the three-way with the Emperor and Vader. That would have been amazing if they had pulled that off. Then it would have been better. That would have been fucking.
Except I don't think that scenario would have even started the way it did if not for Luke.
That's also a good point. But
because Luke turned himself in for Vader's sake.
That's true. That's a good point. I am spitballing here.
Yeah.
I think either way,
we'll
through 4 and 5.
Kind of sit on that for the next week, and we'll reconvene. We'll reconvene and try to find a consensus on how they could have done this better, if at all possible.
Yeah, through 4 and 5 though, at the very least, Luke should have been asking way more questions, and he still, even if it was in 5, he could have figured it out himself. During the dialogue with Vader, he still could have figured it out himself, or something.
Yeah, felt the connection, kind of like he did with Leia. With the connection, which on one hand, like that kind of also came out of nowhere, and Mark Hamill especially has said that, like, I think George Lucas was just trying to have another "I am your father" moment, but it's done a lot more subtly with Luke and Leia. We'll definitely touch on that in Return of the Jedi because that's when it happens.
He does have a little bit of problem with things kind of coming out of nowhere.
Yeah.
A big problem that Ruby has, and if we're going to insult it, we have to.
Yeah.
But they do kind of allude to Leia here.
Yes, and that's actually my next plot point, is kind of hints at Leia being connected to the Force in this, which I don't know if they had already planned on her ending up being Luke's sister, or if they were just planning on her being just another Jedi. Yeah. But that could have just been another Force user.
Yeah, that didn't necessarily mean she had to be a sister.
Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah, that could have just meant another potential Jedi to return.
But they at least hinted that she was Force sensitive.
Yeah,
so.
and she does have a connection with Luke. Like, she is the one that finds Luke, because up until that point, they do know Luke's on Bespin because Luke does kind of catch up with them for a second, and Boba Fett and Boba Fett trade some blaster bolts. Which, guys, want to talk about Boba Fett?
Yeah.
He looked cool, and became, and like in a series where merchandising is where the money is, that was really important.
Yeah.
So,
He
has to say, Boba Fett is overrated as
he really is.
Yeah.
I know people look so upset that like Boba Fett died in like To the Sarlacc. It's like, I mean, if you just watched episodes 4 and 5, like Boba Fett's nothing really. He's He's mad.
Yeah, he's only in the special edition of A New Hope.
Kid Boba Fett were like, what was the big deal with this guy?
Yeah. Kid Boba Fett in fucking Clone Wars TV show is way more badass, and like he only exists to be that badass because they trying to make Boba Fett later on look more badass, because the whole thing like, oh, he actually survived the Sarlacc. It's like,
which that is canon again. Disney did confirm
that is now canon again. Yeah, which I'm not.
It is? Okay.
I mean, here's the
thing. It was like less than a week ago. They had like a press conference or something. We're talking about books that are the books that are coming out next year. One of them is focused on Boba Fett post Return of the Jedi.
Did they confirm the whole he's fought Darth Vader to a standstill?
I don't think so.
Okay.
In fairness, given the fact that they retconned him so well in in Clone Wars TV show, and he is actually badass.
Yeah.
I don't mind that now. Like, given that he makes him look a lot more badass, I don't mind that I could believe that he could get out of there, basically is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
Before then, I wouldn't. It'd be just retarded, and that's the problem. Is like the funny thing is that most of the people that are happy about the fact that Boba Fett it's now canon that he survived the Sarlacc are those old curmudgeon-y Star Wars fans that think the prequels don't count.
Yeah, oh god, yeah.
When it's really
we're back on this again, guys.
When it's really the prequels and the Clone Wars, which is like a prequel TV show, that made it believable at all that could have happened.
Yeah, they were kind of his saving grace in a way.
That really is saving grace, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah, and it started with this. It started with just this cool design in that bounty hunter lineup. I love the bounty hunter lineup, and I love
really cool.
I actually know like all their names, and I had a couple of their action figures.
I know a few of them. It was like Bosk.
Bosk, which they reused part of a Star Trek outfit. Or it was either Star Trek or Doctor Who.
Oh yeah,
they reused the outfit for Bosk.
I recognize the face mask. Yeah, it was a whatever it was.
Star Trek. I think it was Star Trek because I think the Doctor Who lizard people look way different.
It was a Star Trek.
Yeah, there's that.
Captain Kirk fights at one point.
Yeah, in a very famous scene where he's like throwing rocks. And,
Star Trek episodes.
There's also Dengar, he's the guy with all who's looking like freaking Winter Soldier. You got IG-88, who is my favorite. Awesome. IG-88's freaking intense. He's an assassin droid who dual wields rifles and stuff. And then you got Zucus, who's the insect-looking guy, and then Forlom, who is like a protocol droid who is reprogrammed for combat.
Yeah, that's kind of funny.
Yeah, like you got that lineup, and then Boba Fett's in the center, and when Darth Vader's like giving them their orders, he directly looks at Boba Fett and is like, "No disintegration."
Yeah,
and Boba Fett's like, "No promises."
Yeah,
Which I think, I don't know if this is canon or not. I know this was a theory, but there's a theory floating around off and on throughout the decades that Boba Fett is the one who killed Owen and Beru, who killed Uncle Owen and Aunt Beru, and he vaporized them.
Huh.
Yeah, I don't know.
See,
I've only seen that theory around like Facebook groups and stuff.
I'm not. I don't know if he was even like a thought on George Lucas.
Yeah, I don't think so. That would have been like expanded universe stuff anyway. Which now that we've talked about Boba Fett and the plot twist, and I mean that's kind of the end of the movie. Like Hong is frozen in carbonite. Yeah. The rebel forces don't even have a home planet now. Now they're just floating around in space. Like, now what?
And for some reason, Lando is wearing Han's clothes.
Oh my goodness, we haven't actually talked about Lando at all. We haven't talked about Billy D. Williams and his glorious mustache.
Dude, his mustache is quite glorious.
Yes.
By the way, my favorite bounty hunter of all time, of course, is still Cad Bane. Just saying. Cad Bane is dope. But yeah, and actually, they reused Bosk in Clone Wars and in did they use him in Clone Wars as well? I know they used them in they used him in Clone Wars and in
I don't know if they've used
Rebels. Well,
they've used IG model assassin droids like all the time. Like there's two of them hanging around Cad Bane, but I don't think they've ever used like IG-88.
I mean, Bosk is actually one of Boba Fett's allies in
I thought they were rivals, but
no, they're
well, they kind of a lot of the expanded universe stuff like to. I'm gonna use this word ship Boba Fett with Bosk as kind of like the anti Han Solo Chewie.
Huh.
Like they paired them up. They paired them up a lot. Yeah.
They are paired up. They're paired up.
Yeah, they're paired up a lot in the books and stuff.
No, they're on the same. Okay, they're on the same team. They even work with what's her face. They even kind of.
Asajj Ventress.
Asajj Ventress, yeah.
They even kind of worked it into the lore where Bosk is a Trandoshan, and the Trandoshans are the arch nemesis of the Wookiees.
Yep, they do actually. Yep. Actually, that storyline was pretty great, to be honest.
And so Bosk is actually more concerned with hunting down and killing Chewie than Han.
Yeah, Chewbacca. Yeah.
Just because he's a Wookiee. God, racist Trandoshans.
No, the Trandoshans suck balls, actually. They do a good job with making the... To be honest.
Yeah.
So anyway, Billy D. Williams and his glorious mustache.
Slickest man in the galaxy.
Yep.
Of course, the one black man in this movie would also be a con man.
No, I mean, he did a good job though. I liked it because you can actually tell that he feels bad. You know, they actually do a good job with that.
They do a good job with Vader's like, I've altered our deal. Pray I don't alter it again. And he alters it one too many times, and Lando's like, okay, no longer worth it. I'm helping Han. I'm screwing you over.
Yeah, definitely. So his little journey throughout is a fun thing to follow, and you can definitely see like where it's going. So
and it's not really a character arc because he's got his principles and he's got his priorities, and like I said, Vader just crosses the line. Like Vader's the one that crosses the line with Lando, and Lando's like, okay, you keep failing to hold your end of the bargain. I'm not going to hold my end anymore. I'm going to help the rebels.
And it's definitely one of those things. And he pretty much sees the writing on the wall. Okay, I thought this was going to be a way for us to like keep the Empire off our back.
Yeah, I mean the whole reason why he did this at all, the whole reason why he did this,
end of the deal.
Yeah, the whole reason why he did this at all is because the Empire was already knocking at his door for his gas, and in his mining
Yeah,
facility.
and he had a bunch of people to take care of and stuff like
Yeah,
that.
so
He
like
had
if
an
I do this
entire
deal, so the
city,
original deal
and then
was
it's just like,
the original deal was
yeah, and
hand
that's
over
why,
Han and stuff, and the Empire would leave Cloud City alone forever. Like that was his
yeah,
goal.
yeah,
Yeah.
and that's why he has to take the time to say, everyone, just get out of here. The
Yeah,
Empire's
taken over.
Yeah,
It's done too late.
yeah, it's one of those things where he sees the writing on the wall. He's just like, okay, cutting my losses now. So,
And he does do a good job of seeming actually remorseful and trying to help and everything. I actually and Billy D. Williams does selling all of that. So I think he's actually a pretty great addition to this series. Like, another example of how you can add a new character without making them feel like a fifth wheel.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. He is a very welcome addition. And also, one other thing I have to ask about that I just noticed, or in the scene where Han gets lowered onto like the torture machine or whatever, like torture rack. What did that thing do to him exactly?
I don't
because
know.
he has no holes in like his clothes.
It did everything to him.
Everything.
No,
and
I think
nothing,
I think it actually like scorched his torso and stuff.
Well, yeah, but like when they bring him back, they're like nothing's wrong with his shirt or his clothes or anything like that, and like his face is fine. I don't know.
Maybe it's like overhaul, and he just like kept on like destroying him and then repairing him over and over again.
I don't know. I don't know. Yeah, that was just kind of weird to me. I was just like, what did that thing do? But anyway, so we get to the end, and I thought this was another funny thing for the Family Guy thing.
The good guys lost. The Empire struck back, and the Empire won. Hands down, definitive victory for the dark side.
Yeah, Luke lost his hand. Han's gone. The rebellion is scattered to the
literally
winds.
The only way it could have been worse is if Luke got captured as well. That is literally the only way it could have gone worse.
Much,
or if more people died, or if like Leia died.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say.
Yeah, very much. At the end of the movie, the Empire once again has their foot right back where they started.
Yep, and Luke gets his robotic hand, much more advanced than the one his dad had at that age.
Yeah, it has pain sensors, actually, interesting enough, so yeah.
Yeah, and I'm gonna bring this up with Return of the Jedi again also, and explain what I mean by Tag and Bink. That just reminded me of the Tag and Bink comic from Dark Horse. I'll explain what that is in Return of the Jedi when we talk about Return of the Jedi. Okay. It's hilarious. That kind of covers all my plot other than the final three, the most important three. So, with this movie, I think it kind of ruined sequels for a very long time. Because a lot of filmmakers to this day missed the point. I alluded to this last time. Mm-hmm. And so here is my rant at my very calm rant at the expense of filmmakers for the last 30, 40 years. Just because
Hollywood in general.
Just because a movie is darker does not mean it's better. Because a movie is grittier does not mean it's better. Yes, we get it. Empire Strikes Back was awesome. But it was also very lighthearted. There's a lot of comedy here. There's a line where Leia calls Han a stuck-up, scruffy-looking nerf herder. What are you supposed to do with that line except laugh at just how absurd whatever imagery is in your head after she says that?
You can't say that word. Only we can say that word.
But I'm just kind of sick with dark right now. With the whole dark Hollywood, everything has to be dark and gritty in order to be taken seriously. Even Marvel has done a fantastic job at kind of avoiding this, where even their quote-unquote dark and gritty movie, Winter Soldier, still has way more levity than even something like Transformers has. Like, even Transformers, which is the stupidest franchise of modern Hollywood, tries having these moments where it's taking itself way too seriously.
Yeah,
they're fucking giant robots that turn into cars and planes. And
Like,
shit.
I think
make us take that seriously.
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
as far
I
as
do not
Marvel
take that
goes,
slightly
I
seriously.
think as far as Marvel goes, the worst offender is probably Thor: The Dark World. But you also had like
I haven't seen it yet.
Yeah, you also had Star Trek Into Darkness, The Dark Knight, the entire DC extended universe.
Okay, but at least the Dark Knight trilogy was actually good. Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and you also got like Harry Potter kind of did that, even though the dark gritty Harry Potter movie is the best one, which is the third one. My opinion. It's a lot of people's opinion, but
the fourth one was ridiculous. But yeah.
Yeah.
I think all the films kind of suck except for Alan Rickman, so I don't really.
Yeah. Not my favorites. It's none of them are gonna make my top 10 of any decade. Maybe the years that they came out, a couple of them will make
especially
the list.
because comparatively, as the books get better, the films get worse. Because 5 and 6, the films are pretty shitty.
I can't really comment because I've only read like a few. I've only read like 3 or 4 of the books.
Those are the best books. And now, okay, here's the thing. Now, Harry Potter gets darker and grittier as the series goes on.
And it kind of makes sense because it's grown up. The characters are growing up and maturing.
Yes,
but
exactly.
It doesn't make sense in Man of Steel. It doesn't make sense. It really doesn't make sense with the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle movies.
Oh God, no! I mean, I won't even touch.
Out of the Shadow, the second one is way better. It's still crap, but it's at least a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle movie and not CGI monstrosity movie that takes itself way too seriously and forgets that it's Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Named after fucking artists
toys.
from Italy.
Yeah.
Although, to be fair, the original Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, like the original, was actually kind of dark and gritty.
But but that's not what anything is based on. They're based off the toys.
That's not what it's remembered for. Anyway.
Yeah. And so you see, every time a dark gritty sequel comes out, you kind of see these, almost like Empire. The Empire Strikes Back of insert franchise here. It's a buzzword. It's a buzzword meant to get you hyped. Nothing's the Empire Strikes Back of anything except the Empire Strikes Back.
And that's the other thing. I think with Empire Strikes Back is it doesn't actually feel dark. It just feels like they're losing a bit.
Yeah.
That doesn't make it dark. That just makes it a bit more negative.
That just makes it the second. That just makes it the second act of the hero's journey.
Exactly. Yeah. That doesn't. Exactly.
And for a really good example of a sequel that kind of breaks this mold is Terminator 2, widely considered another one of the best
better
sequels ever, because the first Terminator was very dark, very gritty, but Terminator 2 was hilarious, and it was also very lighthearted. And
a lot of people have problems with that, but I prefer Terminator 2 over Terminator, but I do know a lot of people who prefer the first one, and I can respect that opinion because a lot of people really preferred like kind of the more bone crunching grindhouse type, almost slasher film aesthetic of the first Terminator movie over the more streamlined, shiny, polished look of Terminator 2.
Yeah.
I mean, I hate James Cameron, but I will admit that Terminator 1 and 2.
It's his best. It's his best film. Terminator. Well, it's his best 2 films.
Yeah,
I think it's the only James Cameron shit I actually don't hate.
Yeah, it's like those two, like the first 2 Terminator movies and Titanic for me.
Yeah,
I hate Titanic.
Yeah, we had this discussion last time.
We had that conversation.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's right. We already talked about that.
But Terminator 2 holds up, and it didn't have to, up the ante on like the dark and the gritty that the original Terminator had. It was just
same thing with Captain America: Winter Soldier, because Captain America himself doesn't suddenly become dark and moody like Superman does in Man of Steel. He's still the exact same character he was in the first Avenger and the first Avengers. in his first 2 outings, but he's being dropped. It's almost like a testament to. It's almost like a deconstruction of the dark gritty sequel, because Captain America, this really bright, colorful, happy-go-lucky character, is being dropped into this like dark gritty plot, and then making it lighter just with the virtue of his very presence and personality. And I love characters who do that. Ruby does that for me. Mr. Smith, Jefferson Smith from Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, very much the same thing. He's this very idealistic character who gets dropped into like this extremely corrupt, dark system, and works like an antivirus, or reverse virus rather, to like make it actually better, to make the entire world better, one Senate seat at a time. And so that's kind of my rant on like the whole idea of dark gritty sequels. Is you don't need to be dark and gritty. Empire Strikes Back isn't really that dark and gritty. It's the darkest. It's the darkest of the Star Wars movies, at least until Rogue One, or at least until Revenge of the Sith, rather. Revenge of the Sith got freaking dark in some really, really weird ways.
In
some child murdering ways.
We'll talk about that later, but some ways that may or may not have been necessary. We'll leave that one for when we talk about that. But
so the other thing I just want to touch on, much like kind of winding down here, special edition. What do you guys think? I think this is the one that had the least amount of changes throughout.
I'd say, I think so.
Yeah, I didn't.
Like the only thing I can think of is that there's more ships. There's more ships in the background, and like some of the Star Destroyer shots.
Which I'm kind of good with, though, to be honest. I'm actually
they re-edited the scene at the very end. They actually show Darth Vader like getting on his craft and flying towards the Star Destroyer, and it kind of cuts that with other scenes in the Millennium Falcon. Like it kind of extends that sequence a bit. You see the Wampa. You actually see the Wampa, which I really like because it's a really cool design. Really wish it would. Really wish they could have gotten the suit to work for the theatrical release, but whatever. This is certainly the one that had the least amount of changes in it out of the original trilogy.
Yeah, and they didn't feel particularly like invasive or anything like that. Like some of the changes in
A New Hope. I think A New Hope is the worst offender as far as that goes. With Return of the Jedi, the worst stuff was added in, not in the special edition, but in the Blu-ray release. Like the Blu-ray release is what added like the whole no.
Yeah, I think special edition was okay. I don't think it was terrible or anything like that. So
no, it certainly wasn't invasive. So final verdict. I already said my score. It's still a 10 out of 10 movie for me. I don't like it quite as much as A New Hope, but it's still right up there. It comes within a freaking hair.
Yeah.
For me, it's hard to say because I am really disappointed by the way they did the whole Vader Luke reveal. Not just the reveal, but the whole. It does kind of come out of nowhere, and he should have done a lot more to. They should have built it up more. I feel like just because as much as the plot twist is a big deal, like the movie isn't made off of that. It's a good movie. Despite that, not because of that. That's a problem a lot of people have, is they think that that's what makes it good. No, that's actually not how you do a plot. It comes out of nowhere, and it doesn't become important. It doesn't really become important until the plot twist happens. That's the exact opposite of how it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be important, and therefore the plot twist means something. So that's why it's so shitty. And so for me, honestly, it goes down to an 8.5 out of 10 just because of it. Now, in fairness, I should have lowered the New Hope rating as well, because technically New Hope is also partly to blame for why the plot twist wasn't done better, because New Hope needed to set it up a lot better as well. So retroactively, I would put New Hope at a 9.5 and I'd put this at an 8.5. Otherwise, this would be a 9 and New Hope would be a 10 in my opinion. So yeah, but it's still really great. The performances are incredible. I definitely wholeheartedly believe that New Hope is a better film than Empire Strikes Back, which is crazy because George Lucas directed New Hope and didn't direct Empire.
Yeah, he didn't direct Empire Strikes Back or Return of the Jedi.
Yeah, I mean, I also
think
kind
of a tease for next week. The guy who directed Return of the Jedi, probably outside of George Lucas, the best director of a Star Wars film. Like outside of his work for Star Wars, his movies are better than Irvin Kershner's movies or J.J. Abrams' movies or Colin Trevorrow's movies. Or Gareth Edwards. Except now that title goes to Ron Howard. Because Ron Howard is the new director.
Yeah, I was gonna say now.
Solo and
now it's Ron
Howard. Ron Howard's the only one. Ron Howard's the only one with an Academy Award between all of them.
Yeah, it's true. He's the only one I think that could actually save all that shit. So we'll see.
We'll see. We'll see next year. Ugh.
But I will say that together with 6, I think 5 and 6 go amazingly well together. And if I took those two as a whole, I'd raise, even with the Luke, I am your father line, or sorry, no, I am your father line, and that plot twist as a whole, not just the line, like not being delivered in the best way or built up it was as well as it should. I would still, then I'd raise it back up to a 9, just based off of that, because the way those storylines go in and out together, the way those two mesh together as a whole is really amazing.
Yeah.
So.
And so I think I agree that. Well, yeah. So I still think that this was a very good movie. And one thing that I really appreciate about this, because it's kind of hard to get me to rewatch a movie. A lot of movies I just watch one time. This is a movie I watch over and over again, and I still enjoy, and I enjoy it from the perspective of like about a father looking for his son and stuff like that. As twisted as that seems, like I enjoy that idea, and I enjoy the just the way that it builds up the Empire as this very, very powerful force. Once again, reinforces it as this extremely powerful force. And I very much appreciate how it expands on, the force and stuff like that. And it's, and kind of and makes the force more, kind of like you said, more tangible. And so, yeah, like I said, I'm not big on putting like numbers on things, but this is another movie that depending on the mood, that I do think it is a little weak. That it, like upon rewatching it now, I do feel like it's a little weaker than episode 4, but definitely not by much. I think it's still a very phenomenal film. So yeah.
All right, so gonna wrap things up here. If you like this video, like, comment, subscribe, and share this around with your Star Wars friends. I am Mediocrity 4. I do reviews mostly of Ruby because it's that time of year. And we do podcasts. We do the Beyond podcast. This is the second installment of our Star Wars series. And we also do a podcast every week for Ruby. You can also find me on like Fanfiction, Fiction Press and stuff. And it's coming close to my channel's 1-year anniversary, and I'll have something for you then. Follow our Facebook group, Ruby and Beyond, and support my Patreon. Click all the links in the description.
Also, if you liked or disliked or hated this video and want, we did do a Star Wars Episode 4 podcast, and we're going to be doing 6, 1, 2, 3, the TV shows, Rogue One, Episode 7, and then Episode 8 once it comes out as well.
Yeah.
Every Wednesday for the next couple of months. So
So
be ready for those as well if you enjoyed this. Yeah, there you go. This will be continued, basically, is what I'm saying.
To be continued.
Yeah.
I think that's a good note to leave off of. To be continued.
Yep.
See you later.